Okay, we're on to the last part here. We're going to finish this all up. I did the mock-up. I got everything all put together, and this is what the final build is going to look like. I got everything installed, so now the only thing we have to do now is wire in a receiver so we can set everything up, wire in the VTX and the camera. So we're going to dig down and I'll show you how we did all this, and we'll get her finished up today, hopefully. First thing we're going to do is get rid of our props, and then the programming video, I'm going to try to figure out how to do screen capture, because the last time I tried doing it with this camera, it didn't turn out so hot. You can barely see any numbers or anything like that, and that don't help anybody if they can't see what I'm trying to point to. So get that all worked out and figured out. And off come the props. Put that out of the way. And then we'll take this top off. This dipole antenna is not going to stay. I just got that in there for testing because I don't have the axis stubby I want to put on there yet. So, in time. But anyway, we'll take this top plate off, dig down to the VTX, and show you how that's all set up. Okay, here's the top plate off. Now, these VTX here, I love these things. They started out, Pando RC made those when they first came out, and then these guys, I don't know if they rebranded the company or whatever, but these things are rock solid VTXs. Very, very clean, very, very strong. They're 25, 200, 600. Now I've got 4 bolts in here. They run all the way up to the top here. I only use 2 lock nuts on the very top to hold that down. There's no need adding extra weight if you don't have to. It's not like it's going to go anywhere, and if the stack does go anywhere, it's because the whole thing broke. Well, that's a stubborn one. There we go. And that's MMCX connectors, much better than the other little tiny ones. They break and pop off all the time. So that takes the VTX out, and the next thing is this little plate that came with it. I believe it's supposed to go underneath the speed controller, but I'm going to use it here so we can get the space in here, put my receiver in between here and get the airflow. I wanted a VTX on top of the stack here to keep the airflow away and signal radiation from interfering with everything. I think that's where a lot of people have problems with their video issues, and just using these nylon nuts for spacers, only because I got a bajillion of them. You gather parts like this all the time when building these things. And what we're going to do next is slide this off, put the wire into the receiver, and do our measuring and cutting, and then we'll do our soldering. Always going to be that last one's going to mess with you, right? Never fails. But this is the last part of the build, and we've got a bunch of little fine wires. I'm going to show you some tricks for wire management and as far as keeping signal noise down. And that little bugger there is super, super tiny. It's a XM Plus, or no, XSR. Sorry. And what we're going to do is we're going to put our wires in. get them all done. Make sure that little clip's in there. Now these are going to run to these 3 pads here, like we showed. And what I want to do is run the receiver antennas out the front, and I'll angle them off of here with zip ties and cover them to get them away from the VTX antennas. Now what I do with these cables here is I'll braid these. I'll braid the positive, negative, and the signal, and then I've never used the smart audio port, and the VTX has a microphone on it, so I don't need to transmit audio through here. It'll automatically be on there, so I don't need to connect audio cable to anything else. And I'm going to pause there. I'm going to measure this out, braid it all up, and then I'll be back to do some more talking. Okay, we are back. I got the receiver signal, power, and ground. Got those braided. That one gives it a lot more strength than pulling on single wires if something catches on it. Number 2, it makes your builds a lot neater. And number 3, it keeps, with that ground intertwined between there, it acts almost like an RFI shield and keeps signals from getting inducted into there. So our pads are, for here, are ground, 5 volts, and our S bus. So we're going to tack those in real quick. Again, tin your iron away from your work. Nice bead in there. And just touch it in there. Simple, simple, simple. And do our next one. To our 5 volts. Again, line up your color-coded casings to the edge of the board. Tiniest drop of solder on your tip of your iron, and it's on. Again, you're not heating your board. You're not doing any damage to your wires. You're not getting it hot enough that the sleeving on your wire shrinks back or anything. Of course, that's not so much a problem nowadays with the silicone wiring and all, so that also helps. The hardest part is, at this point, is getting everything in where it needs to be and not messing anything up. And again, always check your work. Make sure there's no shorts in there. Not sure how good you're going to see on this, but that looks like that's going to work. Okay. So, and that'll loop around there and plug into our receiver underneath there. Now I gotta pause this for a minute and figure out where the smart audio is going to go. And actually, I think I'll hold off on that. I'm going to get this is soldered on. I'm going to get the VTX wires cut and soldered on. So, let's see. This plate's going to go in there. I'm just going to throw 2 nuts on here for now to get the height that we need. Again, you don't have to be this meticulous about your builds, but if you want to make them really, really neat and really professional looking, let alone not have to do a lot of rework down the road because your wires are hanging out all over the place and getting caught on everything. It's just a lot easier doing all this now, keeping it all neat for when you're out in the field flying. It's easier for repairs, it's easier for checking things to make sure everything's good, and it's a whole lot easier to keep clean if there's less wires being strewn all over the place. So again, we're going to get the smart audio out of the way and give just a little bit of strain relief on this. You can always curl it in and under. With the braids, it's not going to matter too much, so that looks about right there. Just cut those. And now we can pull that out of the VTX so we're not doing it. Now, I know I said on the bigger wires not to use your fingers to pull this, but these really fine silicone wires, those strippers don't break down that small, so you have to, and it just pops right out. Just make sure before you tin these little ones is you give them good twists so you don't have single strands sticking out. See that a lot on other electronics and builds and stuff, and that usually gives you a problem, especially when these pads are so close together. And we'll get this out of the way here. It's probably taking up a little more time than necessary on the video, but it's a lot easier than starting to stop and trying to edit a bunch of small chunks together. Just as easy to put longer chunks, just have it run a little bit long. And again, I believe it's ground 5 volts and the VTX signal, so just to confirm it. And again, set that out of the way and tin everything up here real quick. Let's see, I'm gonna flip you so you're like so. And again, trying to work in between everything here. It makes it nice to have a longer, skinnier reach to do things. It also helps not to have shaky hands. I know I said that a bajillion times, but it's pretty evident. The hardest part's going to be wiring that camera in. Got a little bit too much solder on there. But it's a joint and it's connected, and not seeing any bridging or shorts or anything. So, and that's that step. The next thing I do is dig out a cable for that and get that prepped up. So I'll be back. Alright, we are all back. Alright, what I've got here is I've braided all my power, ground, and signal wires for my receiver, my VTX, and the camera. And then with the smart wires, since I've never done that, I just wrapped them around there twice just to keep them under control. So everything should be there, protected, and cut to length. So we're going to start putting this all back together again. I'm going to start with the camera. So plug that in. Make sure it clicks in good. And then grab these little tiny screws and try to find the holes to put them in. Okay, one of my nut drivers disappeared. Oh, there it is. Okay. Alright. Now comes the juggling act. Start by sticking it through there. And with that washer on there, that screw is not long enough. So I guess we don't use them washers for this. Hopefully it doesn't pull through that TPU mount and it crash and throws my camera all over the place. So we'll start with that one. Get it started, leave it loose. And I'll spin around this side. Grab the screw. And try to get everything to line up. Okay, that was scary easy. Alright, now we got these wires here. Make sure they're not going to catch on anything in case the camera gets hit and pulled around. So we can probably tuck them down just a little bit lower, get them out of the way. So now they'll move freely and not get caught on anything. And then next we will do our receiver. Now remember, I want to mount this so the antenna wires go forward, so feed them through the front here. Get that down where it belongs. And my little nylon nuts here. Oh, probably help if I plugged it in, huh? That'd probably be a good idea. There. That will probably make it work a little bit better. And again, the wires are out away from everything. They're not getting any signals inducted on them. Now we can put these little nylon bolts or nuts down. Start it. And run those down. Stole this wrench from my car kits. I've got a bunch of these laying around, and it works out perfect for building, especially when you're doing standoffs and stuff like that, because the standoff will fit up in there perfect, but not go down far enough where you can still see. That little bow in there lets your standoff sit in, but it sticks out probably about to there, so you can see for doing things like tightening down, soft mounting. You can see where you're at and know what pressure that you got on there. Again, all these take is basically 2 fingers to snug them on there. That's pretty much it. Now for the VTX here, I'm using the dipole antenna because I don't have my axis stubby yet. So I'm going to put that in there, and then we're just going to feed the dipole up through the top plate to have video. This is the hard part. Everything being new and spacing and all that. There we go. Now we got her down. I'll plug that in there. Let's see, you're high, so you got to go up that way. Get a little push inside to there. And go with this corner. And this corner. Now the reason I don't put 4 nuts on here is, if you notice that microphone placement now, it's too close to there and the nuts actually hit that, you end up breaking it off. On the original design on these, they had something in this opposite corner over here that you would hit. Seems like they moved those capacitors, these 2 filter caps, away from the nut a little more. And I'll bet you this whole thing's spinning. Yep. Again, it's all fine nylon stuff and electronic components. You don't need to crank these all down, just enough to make sure the stuff isn't flopping around and the nylon actually grabs. And then finally we do our top plate. So feed it through there. Screw started. And for this TPU mount, I'm gonna let that come up through the top here and kind of flop around for the maiden, so I don't have it go down and short or anything like that. I'll tape it so it doesn't get in the way or get messed up as we're flying around on the maiden. But I definitely don't want that connector going down and shorting anything now that there's power going to be put to it. And again, I probably wasn't paying attention. Got the nothing but the back of my hand when I'm doing screws. Sorry. I have to see when I edit. May have to redo this section. But anyway, that is that, done and done. Now the only thing left to do is get some zip ties, and I'm going to slide the receiver antenna under there, and that will get zip tied and heat shrunk to the zip tie, same thing here. And I want to keep these short as possible so there's less chance of them breaking. That puts it at 90 degrees. And with the antenna of the VTX back here, there's no way they're going to conflict, and they're not going to overpower each other. So that is that, done and done. So I'll do zip ties and heat shrink that, get a picture of it, and tape this down, and we'll go on to the programming part. Show you how to do it all in Betaflight and radio setup all the way through. Later.